Okay, our next location is Capitol Reef National Park. I've already zoomed in on it here on Google Earth. There are a lot of things that we could look at, but we are just going to focus on a few. The first is this really cool elevation tool. It says right here what the elevation is depending on where you scroll over. So the elevation where the place marker is at is about 6,000 feet above sea level. That's pretty high. It also gives us absolute location rule. So it's giving the latitude and the longitude of where the location is at depending on where you scroll. So that's cool to take note of. Another thing that we're going to look at is this green little camper guide. That's called the Trimble Outdoors Trips layer. And it's basically where campers that have already hiked and hikers that have already hiked have given us feedback on the hikes that they've done and if they're good or not. So we can click on it. It will tell you how long it is, what they were doing, how hard it was. It might even give you some directions, like drive 14 miles to pull out near milepost 83, and it talks about different things like that. Some of the time it will tell you what gear to bring with you, what to wear, things like that. So that's pretty cool. And a couple of the websites that I found for this, we have a lot of kids in our class, and so hiking with kids might be a little bit different than hiking with adults. So you can click on that, and it will take us to this website. So there's 8 different pages that we would be looking at. So it's introductions, how to pack and carry a pack, a pre-hike meeting. So we just flip through some of these. And so it tells us what kinds of things that we would need: backpacks, maps, boots and socks, things like that. And so there's a pre-hike meeting and a navigation, so we learn how to use a map and a compass and things like that. So that's a pretty cool web page. And another one that we have is Capitol Reef National Park has made their own website on utah.com, and in this tab it's telling us the different hikes that have already happened. And so there's a key about what the hikes mean. So you can see the green circle ones mean they're pretty easy, the blue square ones are moderate, and the black diamond rhombus ones are strenuous, meaning really difficult. So you'd have to be an experienced hiker for that. So it'll give you maps and instructions, things like that. So the questions I have for you: what is the absolute and the relative location of where this place marker is at? So we know the absolute location we can find down here at the very bottom when it tells us the latitude and the longitude. And the relative location is it's in southern Utah. That's pretty relative. So then the next question is, what materials would we want to take on a hike in July? Would that be different than hiking in December? Think about that. And what is the importance of preserving the environment? And some of the camping websites that we learned about, it taught us to carry out what we carried in, meaning we can't leave any trash behind. Why is that important? And how important is it to communicate with other hikers? What topics would you discuss with them? And final question is, how can the altitude, or the elevation found here, affect your hike and what you would need to plan for? Okay, and our final stop is Bryce Canyon National Park. I've already zoomed in on it, so here we go. It's actually a really big national park. There's lots of things to look at, but we will just focus in on a few. The first one that we want to look at is 360-degree cities, which is just right over here. And there's a couple different options. We'll check this one out. So this one is pretty awesome. It's from way up high, and we can look all around. There's even other hikers here, which is pretty cool. But it looks like it's pretty high up, and check that out way down there. So later on we're going to look at why it's so rigid. See all these different rigid parts of the mountain jutting out. And we'll look at why it's so steep and why there's cliffs. So we will look at that a little bit later. But that's a pretty cool picture of the 360-degree cities. Okay, another thing that we will look at over here There is a pretty awesome article, and it's called The State of Rock. So here we go. Let's click on it and see where it takes us. It's going to take us to nationalgeographic.com, and this is an article. It says, time-carved stone into spires on the Colorado Plateau spread across 4 states where wind, water, and weird rule. So we'll look more at what role wind and water will play into what Bryce Canyon looks like today. So we'll read this article, which is 2 pages. Talks about how awe-inspiring it is. Talks about the cliffs there. And we will talk about that a little bit later. So there's that article from National Geographic. And let's take a look at this video. So we can actually watch it right here, if it'll let us. Here we go.
It's our water flow erosion model of science.
So we can look right here and it will play our video. This is Bill Nye. He's going to talk about erosion.
It's our water flow erosion model of science. It's a piece of mineral salt and a hose. Now watch what happens when a stream of water slowly flows over it. It's changing. The water is carrying some of the solid.
So we would watch this whole video, we will, and then I'd ask you some questions about it. And he talks about the different ways that wind and water can erode the landscape. So what is erosion and how does it relate to Bryce Canyon? How does it make it look like that 360-degree city that we looked at? What are some physical erosion examples and what are some chemical erosion examples? Do you have any personal experience with erosion? And finally, why is erosion important and how does it change the way that the land looks?